History has this really ironic way of treating its greatest minds, doesn't it?
It really
They
does.
often toil away completely unseen, and then boom, decades, maybe even centuries later, they're celebrated. Think about Van Gogh. Sold, what, one painting his whole life?
Just one, the Red Vineyard, out
Yeah.
of thousands of works.
Exactly. And now his stuff is, well, priceless. It really makes you wonder, who are today's visionaries? The ones walking among us right now whose big contributions, their genius, won't be fully appreciated until, like, way down the line. It's kind of a sobering thought.
It is.
Welcome to the Urban Herald. As part of the team here, we're doing a deep dive into this very question. Who are today's unsung visionaries, basically waiting for tomorrow's spotlight? We're going to sift through the sources, cut through all the noise, because, let's face it, our world moves incredibly fast, and explore how you can get better at spotting potential future genius.
Because waiting 65 years, that historical average, it just doesn't cut it anymore.
Not at all. This whole pattern of delayed recognition is not just some, historical fun fact.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a systemic failure, almost.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes spotting brilliance today in our hyper-connected, information-saturated world incredibly complex.
It absolutely does. And our look into historical figures, it shows this striking pattern. On average, it takes about 65 years after death for a genius to be widely recognized. Sometimes it stretches out for centuries.
Just as 5 years.
Yeah. And it's not random. It points directly at societal biases, the limits of technology at the time, and sometimes just plain old human stubbornness getting in the way.
Okay, so give us some examples. Van Gogh, we mentioned.
Right. Van Gogh is maybe the most tragic. Over 2,100 artworks, sells one painting. It was actually his sister-in-law, Jo van Gogh Bonger, who tirelessly pushed his work after he died.
So without her.
Who knows? Real recognition didn't hit until the 1930s, maybe 4 decades after his death. The genius was there all along, but the world just, well, wasn't ready.
Wow.
Then you've got Nikola Tesla. His ideas, AC systems, wireless tech, they literally built the foundation for our modern electrical world.
Right. Fundamental stuff.
Totally. But he died pretty poor, completely overshadowed by Thomas Edison, who was, let's be honest, a much better marketer.
The classic innovator versus entrepreneur story.
Exactly. And now, Tesla's name is on one of the biggest car companies globally. That recognition really cemented itself, 17 years after he passed away?
So even he had to wait.
Oh, yeah. And Franz Kafka, that's an extreme case. He was virtually unknown. He actually told his friend, Max Brod, to burn all his unpublished manuscripts. The trial, the castle, all of them.
No way, seriously.
Seriously, thankfully Brod didn't do it. But Kafka's work didn't really start getting major attention until the 1960s. That's more than 40 years after his death.
Why so long?
Well, his themes, alienation, bureaucracy, they suddenly clicked with a post-war society feeling those same anxieties. Timing, context, it all matters. And one more, in science, Gregor Mendel. His work on genetics, how traits are passed down, done between 1856 and 1863, completely ignored.
The P-Plants guy.
That's the one. His laws of heredity were only rediscovered around 1900, 16 years after he died, when other scientists stumbled onto the same ideas. Think about that.
Yeah, what did we miss out on?
Decades of potential progress in genetics, agriculture, medicine, lost time because nobody was listening.
It really is a punch to the gut, thinking about Van Gogh dying, believing he was a failure, or Mendel's work just sitting there. Imagine the breakthroughs we might have had sooner.
It highlights the immense cost of overlooking genius.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Why? Why does this pattern keep repeating? It feels like some of those old barriers are just wearing, digital disguises today, like we're somehow wired to miss it.
That's a good way to put it. There are these systematic barriers.
Yeah.
First, there's just deep societal and cultural resistance. Truly new ideas. They shake things up. They challenge how people see the world, and that makes people uncomfortable.
Right, nobody likes their worldview rattled.
Exactly. Take Ignaz Semmelweis, mid-19th century doctor. He figured out that if doctors washed their hands, fewer mothers died in childbirth. Simple, right?
Seems obvious now.
But it was rejected. Why? Because it implied doctors' respected gentlemen were the ones spreading disease. The establishment found it offensive. Semmelweis was ridiculed, eventually committed to an asylum, and died just before germ theory proved him right.
That's brutal.
It shows how hard it is to accept truths that challenge our status, our ego. Galileo faced it too, with the church condemning his support for a sun-centered solar system. It took them, 350 years to formally say, oops, yeah, he was right.
250 years. Okay, what else?
Well, technological limits were huge back then. Before the internet, before mass printing was easy, getting ideas out there took serious resources, institutional backing. Think of Emily Dickinson. Yeah. Wrote nearly 1,800 poems, intensely original stuff. But only 10 were published while she was alive. Partly because she was a woman in a time with few outlets, partly her reclusive nature. Her genius was mostly discovered after she died, tucked away in drawers. It took decades to even compile it all.
So access was a huge barrier.
A massive one. And finally, there are economic and commercial pressures. There's always pressure for ideas to be immediately useful, immediately profitable. Rosalind Franklin's work with X-ray images was absolutely crucial for understanding DNA's double helix.
Right, the famous photo 51.
Exactly. But her careful, methodical work got overshadowed by Watson and Crick rushing to publish. She died before the Nobel Prize was awarded for that discovery, a prize her work was essential for. The race to be first, the commercial implications, they can sometimes eclipse the deeper foundational work.
It really makes you think about today, doesn't it? Our whole startup culture is often move fast and break things. Are we missing the slower, more meticulous genius, the ones laying groundwork that might not pay off for years?
That's a critical question. We might be prioritizing speed over depth in a way that blinds us.
So this brings us to now, and here's where it gets really interesting for me. How has our picture of genius itself changed? We're not just talking about the lone tortured artist anymore, are we?
No, definitely not. That's a key finding from the research. Our understanding has evolved. It's much more multidimensional now. It goes way beyond just IQ or that romantic, isolated figure.
Okay.
Think about what the philosopher Schopenhauer said. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. It's about that perception, seeing connections others miss, imagining possibilities that aren't obvious.
Hitting a target no one else can see. I like that.
Yeah. And today, we see genius characterized by things like interdisciplinary thinking, connecting dots across different fields, disruptive innovation, not just improving things, but changing the game entirely.
Yeah.
Having a real long-term vision, and being able to synthesize really complex information into something elegant, something workable.
Which of those are most important?
Yeah.
Or hardest to spot?
Well, the analysis suggests disruptive innovation and interdisciplinary thinking are maybe the strongest indicators. But they're also the trickiest to recognize in real time because they don't fit neatly into existing boxes.
Right.
And that leads to another big shift, the collaborative genius paradigm. So much cutting-edge work now comes from teams, not individuals. Think CRISPR gene editing, that wasn't one person in a lab. It was multiple teams, different places, building on each other's work.
Okay, so how do we recognize that?
Uh-huh.
Our old systems, like Nobel Prizes, are built for individuals.
Exactly. That's the challenge. Our recognition systems haven't really caught up with this collaborative reality. It's tough to single out one person when innovation is networked. And related to that is the specialization challenge. Knowledge is so deep now, so specialized. But the big breakthroughs often happen where fields intersect. Someone bridging biology and computer science or physics and art. But traditional departments, they struggle to evaluate that. Is it biology? Is it computer science? It falls between the cracks.
It really is like trying to fit a square peg of multidisciplinary brilliance into the neat little round holes of academia, isn't it?
That's a perfect analogy. It's a fundamental mismatch with how cutting-edge thinking often works today.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us now? What are the big 21st century hurdles making it hard to spot genius? And maybe how can you, our listener, get better at seeing it?
Right. Well, connecting this to the bigger picture, probably the single biggest challenge today is just information overload. The sheer volume is staggering, like 2.5 quintillion bytes of data created daily.
Wow, I can't even picture that number.
Nobody can, really, and it forces us into what researchers call critical ignoring. We have to filter aggressively just to function, but the risk, the cruel irony, is that in filtering out the noise, we might accidentally filter out the truly revolutionary signal, the idea that looks weird or doesn't fit the pattern.
So we tune out the very thing we need to hear.
Potentially, yes. Then there's the acceleration problem. Everything moves faster. Innovation cycles are compressed. There's immense pressure for quick results, quick returns. This naturally biases the system towards incremental improvements, making something slightly better, rather than the deep, fundamental breakthroughs that might take years, even decades, to develop.
Less patience for the long game.
Much less. And of course, we have to talk about social media and algorithms. There's this idea that social media democratizes everything, gives everyone a voice.
The democratization myth, you called it.
Exactly. Because in reality, the algorithms that run these platforms, they're often designed to amplify what's already popular, what's sensational, what gets clicks, not necessarily what's substantive or truly novel. A provocative tweet can easily drown out a thoughtful, nuanced paper.
And then there's the whole cancel culture aspect.
That plays a role too. The fear of public backlash, of saying the wrong thing, even if it's part of exploring a difficult but important idea, it can lead to self-censorship. Potential geniuses might just keep quiet or steer clear of controversial but vital areas.
Okay, so it's a minefield. Where should we be looking then? How can you cultivate that keen eye?
Well, the research suggests focusing on certain fields where breakthroughs are needed but maybe less glamorous. Think climate science, atmospheric physicists working on carbon capture, maybe biomimicry researchers looking at nature for sustainable design.
Stuff that's critical, but maybe not headline grabbing every day.
Right. Or computational biology and medicine people decoding complex biological systems, mapping the brain. AI ethics and philosophy wrestling with the huge societal questions AI raises. Social innovation, behavioral economists, community organizers trying to redesign systems for better human outcomes. These often involve that long-term interdisciplinary approach.
And what about the people themselves? Any red flags or signs?
Yeah, look for indicators beyond the usual metrics. In academia, maybe researchers whose early papers got rejected but are now heavily cited, or scientists working right at the messy intersection of two or three fields, people questioning the core assumptions everyone else takes for granted.
The troublemakers, in a good way.
Sort of. In tech, look beyond the flashy apps. Who's building the open source tools everyone relies on? Who's working on the boring essential infrastructure, like Tim Berners-Lee did with the web? Or people creating cybersecurity protocols? Who's designing for accessibility?
The unsung heroes of the digital world.
Precisely. And in arts and culture, who's using new mediums in challenging ways? Writers tackling themes that feel ahead of their time. Musicians blending technology and tradition in unexpected forms.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Could the next Emily Dickinson be, I don't know, sharing amazing poems just with her cat? Because the usual paths don't fit her style.
It's entirely possible.
Or the next big insight in AI ethics isn't coming from a huge tech company lab, but maybe from a quiet philosophy department somewhere. We have to consciously look in these less obvious places.
We absolutely do.
And technology itself.
Yeah.
It feels like such a paradox here, a real double-edged sword, as you said. It can blast ideas around the world instantly, but it also seems to create more noise, more bias.
That's the core of the paradox. We talked about the democratization myth, social media promising openness, but algorithms often favoring sensation.
Right.
Then you have things like patent wars. The current intellectual property landscape can be a jungle. These dense patent thickets can actually stifle innovation, make it legally risky for people to build on ideas openly. It can slow things down, obscure who did what first.
So the very system meant to protect ideas can hinder them.
Sometimes, yes. And AI itself is both a tool and a potential barrier. AI can sift through massive data sets, find patterns we'd miss, but it might also be biased by its training data. It might miss truly radical ideas precisely because they don't look like past successes. How does an AI trained on yesterday recognize the truly unprecedented tomorrow?
That's a tricky one. It makes me think, is it always better to be recognized immediately? Or is there actually some value in being overlooked for a while? Freedom in obscurity.
That's a fascinating trade-off to consider. The benefits of getting recognized quickly are obvious, right? It brings resources, funding, collaborators. Think of Katalin Karikó and her mRNA vaccine work.
Yeah, finally getting the spotlight during the pandemic.
Exactly. After decades of struggling for funding and belief, her recognition absolutely accelerated the research and application when we needed it most. Immediate validation can fuel more innovation. But working under the radar can offer advantages too. More intellectual freedom, maybe. Less pressure to produce commercially viable results quickly. Less risk of your ideas being co-opted or watered down before they're fully formed. Kafka's legacy, arguably, benefited from him not being a literary star during his lifetime. He just wrote.
So there's a purity to that, maybe?
Perhaps. And this all raises a big question about the role of today's gatekeepers. Who are they? Academic journals, VCs, funding bodies, the media, big tech platforms. Are they helping spot the truly disruptive, or are they mostly reinforcing the status quo? It's probably a mix, but it's something we need to scrutinize.
Definitely. Because as we look ahead, With AI evolving so fast, climate change demanding urgent solutions, global connection being what it is,
Yeah.
we desperately need to get better at finding and supporting genius. That historical pattern, that 65-year lag, it's not just interesting anymore, it feels dangerous. We literally cannot afford to wait that long.
You're absolutely right. The stakes are incredibly high. What's fascinating, though, is thinking about how we can avoid repeating these mistakes. We have to start by rethinking our recognition systems. Well, developing frameworks that aren't just based on old metrics, maybe creating more patient capital funding for research that might take a decade to pay off. Diversifying how we recognize achievement beyond just prizes and publications, actively protecting spaces, maybe online, maybe physical, where unconventional thinking isn't just tolerated, but encouraged.
So, new kinds of awards, different funding models.
Perhaps. Things that value depth over clicks, maybe? And we absolutely need to embrace the collaborative imperative. The huge challenges we face, climate, pandemics, AI safety, they demand people working together across disciplines. Our institutions need to get much better at fostering that. Think about the women behind CRISPR, a prime example of collaborative brilliance.
Right, building those bridges between fields.
Exactly. And maybe the most crucial thing for all of us is to consciously train ourselves to look beyond the obvious. History tells us tomorrow's geniuses are probably working quietly, maybe eccentrically, among us right now. In labs, studios, open source projects, community groups, places we might not expect.
So cultivate that keen eye.
Yes, look for that cross-pollination between fields, that long-term perspective, that elegant simplicity in solving a complex problem, ethical leadership, genuine collaboration. Be curious about the outliers.
Okay, so the geniuses of tomorrow are out there, working today. Our challenge really is learning how to see them. Could that next world-changing idea be hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone, maybe even you listening right now, to recognize its potential?
It's entirely possible.
Let's make a commitment then maybe to foster more curiosity, more openness, more genuine appreciation for the unconventional ideas and the people behind them. Our future might actually depend on it.
I truly believe it does.
We really hope you'll keep thinking about this. Maybe apply some of these ideas as you go about your week. This has been another deep dive from the team here at the Urban Herald.
Thanks for joining us.
Join us next time as we continue to explore what truly matters.